All right, welcome to another edition of Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight. And tonight I am joined by my favorite, Peter Blake, host of the Sports Web on Saturdays. Pete, tell everybody how you can get a hold of him.
They can get a hold of you. Get a hold of me on Twitter at pblake1003, or, of course, the only FM sports talk show on Saturday afternoons from 3 to 5 on 106.1 locally in Clearwater in the Tampa Bay area. It's the Sports Web. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. What do you think about this shirt? Is this shirt nonsense? I think this shirt is pretty cool. And right now, can you tell that I'm pumped up right now? Because when I woke up this morning, I got a feeling, and the feeling is that football season is back, guys, and I'm just ready to talk about it. I know you're ready to talk about it, so let's do it.
You know what? The one thing I can say, we've been talking football since the offseason, and here we are. It's finally here. It's time, and we're ready to go. And you know what? Everything that I hear out of One Buck Place, I'm hearing so many positive things, from coaching to players, to attitudes, to culture. And, you know, when you have a losing culture, it takes a long time to get rid of that. And I'm seeing a lot of players that are getting along, players that are trying to work together for the good of winning games, for the good of being competitive. And right now, you know, when you talk to Dirk Cutter, Coach Cutter, that is the theme, being competitive. And there's so much we have to talk about today, and I'm excited. It's finally here. It's like Christmas. You don't know what to do, but here we are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like Christmas. We're going to see what happens at this point because training camp is going to take place here. We're going to see about these training camp battles, namely at wide receiver, possibly a tight end from what you hear today, according to Joe Buck's fan. And defensively, you're going to see these defensive ends and these cornerbacks work. And I think those are the positions to look at. Also, I was kind of disappointed to see this, but the Buccaneers already have an injury now. It may not be serious, but it's serious enough to be concerned by the fact that J.R. Sweezy, one of their top free agents that they plan to play at left guard, is already on the PUP list. So the Buccaneers, they have depth there with Kevin Panfill. It's going to be interesting to see how this season with an injury. And you know, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid right now with the Buccaneers, Gene. I like the Buccaneers. I like where they're going. I like the direction of this team. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. But I will say that if injuries do take a toll, namely at some of these positions of interest, wide receiver or tight end, then I may have to retreat. Everything looks pretty good so far.
You know what, man? I'm going to be upfront with you. I think fans should be drinking a Kool-Aid every year. This is your team. This is a team you root for. You know, I understand that people want to be realistic about stuff, but you know what? This is your team, and you never know. This could be that year. I can tell you right now that this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is not the same Tampa Bay Buccaneers team you saw last year, not the same 6-win team. I can tell you right now, the fact that Jameis Winston is working so well with Mike Evans, they're working to get that cohesiveness. They're working to improve from what you saw last season. The fact that Jameis Winston and Gerald McCoy are united together to try to win some games. I mean, what Jameis Winston brings to this team and has brought to this team over the past year is really exciting, and it makes you want this team to win. And, you know, that's exciting as fans, and we all need to jump on board as fans.
No, I definitely agree with that. And, you know, I'm a sports broadcaster. I definitely take it seriously. I've looked at it. I've looked at some of the numbers. I looked at some of the film last year. I feel pretty confident to say that I believe this team will have more wins than they had last year, even though the schedule is tough. But you know what? You're looking at the Bears schedule today because I have a friend in Chicago who was saying that the Bears are going to do better than the Buccaneers. And if you look at the Chicago Bears schedule, it's ranked 30th, but it's just as probably tough as the Buccaneers. So, you know, it's kind of like you expect that team to be good. You expect Seattle to be good this year, but you really don't know. You expect Denver to be good this year because they had that defense, but who's going to start at the quarterback? So to look at that schedule and say, you know what, I think the Buccaneers are only going to win 6 or 7 games this year, I think you're kind of selling them a little bit short. Let's see what happens in training camp. Let's see what corresponds in the preseason. And then if you want to make a judgment after that, feel free to.
Yeah. And as a fan, and we've had inherently poorly mismanaged teams over the past decade, you have to have a short memory. You have to be able to go into the next season, just like the defensive backs do. They're not trying to remember back to the first or second game of the season when they had a bad game. They're looking forward to the next game. And that's what us as fans, we need to be doing. I'm looking at players like Ayers. I'm looking at players like Brent Grimes. I'm looking at players like Vernon Hargraves. I'm looking at players like Quan Alexander, who we didn't have for a full season. We've got him. Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I know there's a lot. The jury's out on this guy, but he has a chance to do some things this season, being fully healthy. Gerald McCoy, fully healthy. I mean, there's a lot of things that this team can do, and Gerald McCoy realizes that he can be a leader as much as Jameis Winston. You know, there's room for everybody, you know. Clint McDonald, healthy. Another guy with Super Bowl experience that, you know, we as fans don't really talk a lot about, but I expect big things from him this season. So, you know, there's a lot going on with the team, and we haven't even begun to talk about the coaching. That's where I'm excited. You've got experienced coaches in special positions that can help this team get better that I feel like we did not have last season. And I think that could have hamstrung this team by not having people that knew what they were doing. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think the coaching was the problem last year. I think you look at the film and you could clearly see that the secondary was out of place. You could see that, again, the formations that were called didn't match up with necessarily the coverages that were being played. And I'll throw this word out at you with your point about all these players. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the last couple years, you can actually say this year, it seems like they have a lot of depth, which is unbelievable because if you look again at this team a couple years ago, you couldn't say that. You could say it happened, then you would really be upset and you would feel like, man, the world is about to end for this team. But, you know, depth of positions, especially defensive line, offensive line, cornerback, linebacker, it hasn't been heard of in this team in the last couple of years. And now you're finally starting to see it develop, and that's because of Jason Light. And I'm excited about the coaching. Now, I know already about Gerald McCoy and Jameis Winston. You know, what can you say about Jameis Winston? You have to feel good as a Buccaneer fan to know that Jameis Winston is playing for your team. He's already lost 20 pounds, and he's already called out the supposed defensive leader and told him he needs to be different. He needs to be more vocal. So when you have these type of things coming together, again, you have to be excited for football season, especially being in the Tampa Bay area, having to endure a season like the one that the Tampa Bay Rays put up this year. So I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going in the right direction. I think Jameis Winston leading this team right now in his second year. Let's see how good he is in his second year. Let's see that chemistry with Mike Evans. Now, what I heard today, and this is in care of Joe Bucks fan, the first pass of the day by Jameis Winston, Mike Evans dropped it. Now, this is something that Mike Evans is going to have to improve on because I believe he was a third or fourth wide receiver that had like 12 drops last year, one of the most in the NFL. So he has to get more consistent, and hopefully he does because the Buccaneers are going to need him. They're going to need Mike Evans healthy. They're going to need him consistent catching the ball, and you're going to need Vincent Jackson, who, by the way, looked also good in camp today. So, you know, look at those positions, and if all that stuff is going, then you know that offense is going to be good. The thing that I'm most excited about is the fact that, again, you have Mike Smith as a defensive coordinator. You have a guy that's been a disciplinarian who's going to cut down on those penalty situations. You have a Jay Hayes, the defensive line coach, that's going to get the most out of these defensive linemen. You have Noah Spence. You have Robert Ayers. You have Gerald McCoy healthy. You have Clinton McDonald. You have all these things working in your favor, and I get it. It's the 5th toughest schedule in the NFL, and I get it. You're in a division with the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons. But I honestly believe that this team has a chance to ascend to the second team in this division and be a playoff to wild card team. I truly believe that, and I think people need to get on board. And some of those reasons are because of depth, coaching, and on top of it, having a guy like Jameis that clearly has taken the reins of this team.
Oh, absolutely. You pretty much hit on a lot of points that I was definitely looking at. I mean, let's start with Dirk Cutter and what he's doing. Dirk Cutter has set the tone, and you can see the precision. I mean, Greg Allman reported today that he's running 50-30-20, where you have your starters doing 50% of the plays, you have your backups doing 30% of the plays, and you have your reserves doing the other 20% of the plays. So he's getting these people playing time. He's getting these people ready. So you know what? When you get to the third game in the preseason, you're pretty much, you have a good idea of who you want to keep. And I think that's very vital as well. I like the fact that they're getting everybody involved as much as possible. And I like this coach. He's a shoot from the hip coach. There's no veiled comments. There's no wondering what he's talking about. He's going to tell you what he's got to say, and then he's going to move on. He's a football guy. He's not a reality show host or anything like that. He's the guy that's going to tell you, hey, this is what's going on. Hey, get off the field. You don't know what the hell you're doing. That's the kind of coach you have right here. And I think fans should really appreciate that. And, when you talk about Mike Smith, I promise you, and you heard this right here, if Mike Smith has even a remotely decent season at defensive coordinator, you could find him on the short list as a head coach by 2017. Guaranteed.
No, I agree with you on that, and I think if he does turn around this Buccaneer defense, I certainly think it's possible with all the acquisitions they made in free agency in the draft. I think it's certainly possible that next year he will be looking at a coaching job, and that has to be his motivation. But again, going back to Cutter, I think Cutter set the tone just in minicamp when Austin Seferian-Jenkins wasn't knowing what the play calls were, didn't know the playbook, and he sent him out of there. Cutter is a no-nonsense, and I love that word nonsense, no-nonsense type of coach. He's going to tell you like it is, and he's going to basically have this team disciplined, and I think that's the most exciting thing. He's not only disciplined, but he's exciting. He wants to have those type of explosive plays. He wants to have his offense at the top of the league. He's going to make you respect him. And look, you could talk about all you want to, Cutter not having the head coaching experience, but look, it worked out in Arizona, Arians. So I think it could work out here. It worked out with Todd Bowles with the New York Jets. Didn't have head coaching experience, but got the Jets close to the playoffs. So why can't it work here? All the components are here. It's a perfect storm. It's all here. It's all in front of you. And like I told you before, last year, I keep on harping on this. I really believe that the Buccaneers were a 10-win team. Now, I asked my father this, who I look up to tremendously because he's taught me a lot about football. And I said, look, Dad, if Quan Alexander played in those last 4 games, do you think they would have won them? And he said, I don't know, but I think it's certainly possible. They could have won at least 2 of those. So you look at that, you go from 6 to 8 wins. Well, now you're going to have Quan Alexander for a full season, and basically he's the defensive captain of this team at this point. So everything is coming together. Let's knock on wood. Let's hope there's no distractions, Miko Grimes. Let's hope there's none of those distractions, none of that stuff happening at this point, because I really believe this team can do some special things this year.
Yeah. And, we go back to Dirk Cutter again, and Dirk Cutter made a comment that really kind of stuck in my head when he talked about retention. You look at OTAs and what these players are learning in OTAs, whether it's on defense or offense, new players coming in, learning a new system on defense, new players coming in on offense. And, that retention going from OTAs to minicamp. And then from minicamp, you have a 6-week break, and then you bring everybody back for your first day of camp. Now, the cool thing about this is he said on both sides of the ball that you had retention. That's exciting. That means these guys are doing what they need to do to learn the plays. Now, on Sunday, you know, we won't see pads till Sunday. Everybody keep in mind what you're going to see is shorts and T-shirts all the way up until Sunday, and then you'll see your first glimpse of pads. But it's exciting. The fact that the coach is saying, hey, they retained all this stuff. It tells me that they really want to win, you know?
Yeah,
and
that's what
people from other teams in this division can say whatever they want to, but I'm guaranteeing you this is a different team than what you saw last year. This is not the 6-win team you saw last year. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, you know what, if I'm wrong at the end of the season, I'll do a podcast talking about how wrong I was, but I don't feel like I'm wrong.
No, I don't feel like you're going to be wrong either. I feel like we're both not going to be wrong, because I think we're thinking the same way here. We have a lot of synergy. That's why we do this podcast together. I think it's certainly possible that they could have 10, maybe 11 wins. I don't think it's that crazy. At the least, maybe 9 wins, because the NFC South is tough, and because you're playing the NFC West and you're playing the AFC West and you're playing some teams in there on the road. Dallas Cowboys could be improved. Who knows? But at the end of the day, the thing that I think you have to really get excited about is the fact that you have Dirk Cutter, who's coming back for his 2nd consecutive year as an offensive coordinator. You have a guy that had success last year. You can build off of that. So to me, it's also about consistency with this organization. And that's one thing they haven't had the last couple of years. Now they're starting to develop that, and that's important. You look at the great teams around the NFL. Look at the Carolina Panthers, a perfect model. Look, there were tough times with Ron Rivera. You mentioned it before. They could have fired him, but yet they kept him. They kept that consistent factor. And look, we all know that an offensive coordinator is so important to a young quarterback's development. So keeping him in that building, making him the head coach, should excite the fan base even more, because from here on out, I think Jameis Winston is going to progressively get better. I mean, this is a guy as a rookie that was the 3rd rookie in NFL history that threw for 4,000 yards. Now, look, the NFL rules may favor the offense, but that's nothing to sneeze at, because considering you lose Mike Evans for an amount of time, you lose Vincent Jackson, and it was tremendous what he did as a rookie. He had some rough spots in there. He wasn't perfect, but overall, I think you have to say he definitely is your franchise quarterback, and the reason for that is Dirk Cutter being the offensive coordinator. You have to believe that his staff and Cutter are going to build off of these things, and they're going to take it into the season. And I think the Buccaneers have an advantage. How many times could you say that you're excited about a Buccaneer offense? How many times could you say that you woke up in the morning and you knew that you had a franchise quarterback? How many times could you say that you believe that the Buccaneers are going to be a competitive team? Fans, wake up. It's football season, baby.
That's right, man. And you know what? You got me excited about it right now, just thinking about it. And
That's what I do, man. That's what I do. Hey, what do I say? I'm Peter Blake, giving you something to think about, and I'm putting all these thoughts in your head right now. It's like Christmas morning. We're ready to open up the gifts, but we got to go through this training camp process. We got to go through these preseason games. We got to see these battles develop at these positions that we should talk about next after we go through this, and then it's all over after that. Then it's the season.
And while you're on the subject of Jameis Winston, just keep in mind where the mindset was for this offensive coordinator, who is now our head coach last year. He was worried about turnovers. That was his thing. How many turnovers is Jameis Winston going to give us? Now he's basically given Jameis Winston the keys to the car, because he's seen what Jameis Winston is capable of doing. He's seen that Jameis Winston has pretty much upped his level of play. He's stepped up his game. He's gone out, as you mentioned earlier in the show, he's lost weight. He's dedicated to getting better. And that's what you need in a quarterback right there. I mean, I look at, and I'm not taking anything away from any of the other quarterbacks, the young quarterbacks the Andrew Lucks who, he got paid an exorbitant amount of money. But I feel like this quarterback wants to win. It's not about the money for him. It's about winning. It's about getting better. It's about honing his craft. And, I kind of talked about this last week a little bit, but I look at our last go at a franchise quarterback and the fact that all the components were not there. I can't say for sure what it was. It's a disappointing thing that we had to start all over from scratch and we pretty much hit rock bottom before we could get another one. But I just don't see all the components that quarterback had, that Jameis Winston had. Even that will to want to hone his craft, that will to want to get better, that will to want to be the best. He wants a Super Bowl. It's not, I want to make a lot of money. I want to win the Super Bowl. And he's getting everybody on board, and he's showing these leadership skills. And I believe, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he was on site when the rookies were coming in this week.
Yes. He actually came out, was one of the only, I think he was the only veteran to come out during the rookies. And that just tells you he was the first guy last year to greet all the players. So this guy wants to win, and you're exactly right. I don't think the Buccaneers have had a franchise quarterback since Doug Williams. I really don't. I don't think Josh Freeman, you had that. He had the physical characteristics. Did he have the attitude? Did he have the vocal ability? Could he make all the throws? I'm not necessarily sure about that. And look, Winston has a lot of things to improve on. Let's not anoint him the king of the world yet. But at the end of the day, okay, the guy has the vocal leadership. He's already asked players. He's taking control of this team in a very short amount of time. And you have to believe that, again, the good things are coming for this team because of Winston. I think he has some things to improve on. Completion percentage, he's got to improve on that. Deep pass efficiency, you got to improve on that. That comes with Mike Evans catching the ball, but that also comes with Jameis Winston making the throws that he needs to make. And then there were times last year where he missed a lot of big plays. So I know that Dirk Cutter and that offense, they really want to emphasize the fact of Winston progressively getting better in that area, going through his progressions, second and third, not forcing the balls, because we saw last year Winston make some passes again that made you shake your head. You're like, well, he's a rookie. He cut down on those mistakes. He needs to cut down on them even more. He has to progressively get better, but you're exactly right. I believe the Buccaneers have a franchise quarterback, and his name is Jameis Winston, and the reason why is because he has all these characteristics and all these traits that no other Buccaneer quarterback has had in a long time. If you're a Buccaneer fan and you're a diehard like I am and like Mr. Gene Thomas I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could go from Steve Spurrier to Doug Williams. I'm trying to think of somebody that
Steve DeBerg twice, Steve Young,
Vinny Testaverde.
And Craig Erickson, Casey Weldon. The list goes on and on. Mike Pawlowski, Trent Dilfer, Sean King.
Yeah.
Brad Johnson. Brad Johnson won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and this guy is just head and shoulders above the majority of them, you know?
Sure.
I'm going to say that. I mean, this is his second year. He's going into his second year, so it still remains to be seen. But just what he's showing right now, he's really doing what he needs to do to try to get better and put this team in a position to win. So, let's kind of shift gears. It's camp time. Let's talk about some position battles. And for me, I'm excited about Kenny Bell showing up on the scene. Last year when he was drafted
out today. Right.
Yeah. When he was drafted, I was that guy that was like, this was, to me, one of the best picks of the draft was to grab Kenny Bell. I think he was 5th round out of Nebraska. And I stand by what I said. I feel like injuries may have set him back, but just watching him on the sidelines and seeing him, every time you saw the camera on the coach, Kenny Bell was within maybe 2 to 3 feet. The guy is a student of the game. He wants to learn. And what you can see with a lot of moves that Jason Light has made, these guys have it from the neck up. And that's key for being good in the NFL. You can have all the physical traits you want, but if you don't have it from the neck up, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, and this kid, the problem with him right now is, what does he have? We haven't seen it yet because he was injured last year, didn't play very well in the preseason. But overall, he looks like he has all the characteristics, and you hope he is. You hope he is the third wide receiver. That's what the Buccaneers want. They want a guy like Kenny Bell to step up. They want a guy like Adam Humphries or a Dante Dye, because you don't know about Lewis Murphy. You don't know he's coming off a serious knee injury while getting lost in the museum, but that's beside the point. But he's coming off a serious knee injury, and you don't know what to expect out of him. So you hope that Kenny Bell, Adam Humphries, a Dante Dye, somebody like that steps up, because if not, you're only looking at 2 wide receivers, and you're going to need all the wide receivers you can get. The Buccaneers, they have some options out there in free agency that they haven't necessarily explored at this point. A Roddy White, a Devin Hester who was just cut. Are those players that the Buccaneers want? I'm not sure, because look, you have Dirk Cutter and you have Mike Smith, and they saw Roddy White and they know everything about Roddy White. Yet, why don't they pick him up? So obviously he's lost a step. He may want to play for a contending team, say like the Patriots. So that's why it hasn't happened. Maybe he kicked the tires on the Devin Hester. But the perfect scenario for the Buccaneer organization is to have a guy like a Kenny Bell, who was a 5th-round pick last year, because they see a lot of big things in him.
Yep, I'm right there with you, man. And like I said, I don't see a problem. I think he's ready to go. I think he was ready to go last year, but they shut him down. And I expect big things out of him. And I know this is camp. And for all you fans that are saying, yeah, this is camp, we just had OTAs, this is mini camp, this is just camp. You know what? You can get some ideas about players. I'm not saying they're all going to pan out, but at least you have an idea of what this player may or may not be capable of doing. So, just be excited about your team. And just in that fashion, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on the position battle? What position battle are you looking at right now that you'll probably be following throughout camp going into the preseason?
Yeah, 2 position battles. The third wide receiving spot, who's going to step up out of that? Will it be Kenny Bell? Will it be Adam Humphries or Dante Dye? Or will it be Lewis Murphy, who will come back? And I don't think he's going to come back. So I'm interested to see who steps up out of that. And I'm interested to see about the tight end position. You hear all this stuff about Austin Seferian-Jenkins, how he has all this potential. He needs to show it. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to come out and be consistent. He's got to know the playbook. If not, then Cameron Braid's a guy that could take his job. Brandon Myers is a guy that could take his job. So maybe even a Dan Ventali, who was a 6th-round pick this year, could be in the mix. Most likely he's a fullback. So I'll be interested to see those type of battles.
Yeah. And for me, it's going to be the secondary. The secondary was an atrocity last year, a straight up atrocity. And, I've thrown this stat out there. I'm going to throw it out here again.
Can it get any worse?
You know what? Don't say that, please.
I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, can it get any worse? I don't think it can.
Think about this cornerback carousel that we saw last year, where you had Sterling Moore, you had Jude, you had Jenkins, you had Tim Jennings. I mean, you never knew.
Mike Jenkins.
There you go. You had all these guys playing, and nobody was consistently in one position. This, and it kind of goes back to the play calling again. You know what? This will be determined this season whether it was personnel or was it play calling that was the biggest part of the problem. Nobody wants to come out and say, but if you have the majority of that defense coming back, that's something to look at right there. And if those guys are doing good and doing what they're supposed to, then, you can pretty much draw your own conclusion. But, as I've said throughout the podcast, from the draft, prior to the draft up until now, this team did not look prepared at all. And it was a shame because there were games that they should have won. To your point about this team being a potential 10-win team, the defense let the team down. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the quarterback, but what the defense is supposed to do, if the offense gives you a lead, you hold that lead. You don't let that lead go. Guys,
24-point lead. Can't do it.
Exactly.
Can't do it.
Third string, second and third string quarterbacks looking like Pro Bowlers.
Yeah, I mean, 70% completion percentage, guys having all the time in the world. Maybe that's because of pass rush, but the wide receivers roaming free in the secondary and in the middle of the field. You just can't have it happen. And you're exactly right. And in my organization has kind of told you what they thought of the coaching last year, because you didn't see a lot of big changes in that secondary. Yeah, you saw Brent Grimes being brought in, but Vernon wasn't cut. Jonathan Banks is still on this team. Jude Abadejo is still on this team. So they added Vernon Hargraves. So I think they kind of told you where they were leaning towards. It was most likely coaching. I agree with them. I think it was coaching. I think it's the fact that Lovie Smith had his son coaching the secondary. I think there were different principles and different philosophies, and everything was just screwed up. It was just a big cluster. You know what? I'm not going to say the word, but I know that a lot of Bucs fans were saying that word in Washington. I know that there were a lot of Bucs fans saying that word every game because it seemed like, yes, there was so many breakdowns in that secondary. It was ridiculous. So in my opinion, I think this gets worked out somehow, some way. It may be Werner and Grimes that are going to start from day one. It may be Hargraves. They may run Hargraves out of the nickel. You don't know. But the thing you got to be excited about, Gene, with this secondary is they have all this depth. It seems like they have all these talented players, and they have the coaching staff to coach them up.
Yeah, I agree. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, you've got a rotation. You've got an actual rotation. Sure. And it's one, and I think once they can prove themselves to the fans won't be sitting on the edge of their seat every time third down comes up, third and short, third and 10, third and long. They won't be all stressed out. I think that, this coach getting these players to where they need to be, getting these players ready and getting, and once again, there's that word again, they just being ready, being, watching film and being ready for
being prepared. Right.
Exactly.
Preparation leads to less perspiration. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, a lot of things to be excited about, man. So, with that being said, I know you had mentioned the third wide receiver spot. What is the next spot for you that you're really going to be paying a lot of attention to?
Besides tight end, I'm curious to see about this offensive line, because J.R. Sweezy's going to be on the PUP list. So are they going to at that left guard spot? Most likely they will. He looked good in limited time last year when Logan Mankins was hurt. Did they play Evan Smith? I'll be interested to see how this offensive line works out, because they were fairly decent. They didn't give up a lot of sacks last year. Winston got hit a little bit, but that's probably because Winston held onto the ball a little bit too long trying to make a play. I don't necessarily think that was all offensive line, but I'll be curious to see how this battle works out. DeMar Dotson has returned. He's going to be the right tackle. You have Ali Marpet, at the right guard spot. You have Holly and Evan Smith battling it out for center. And then you have the left guard situation. How long is Sweezy going to be out? Can Penfield handle it? And you got Donovan Smith coming back in his second year. So there's still some questions there. I'm curious to see how that battle works out, how they look. And then on top of that, I'm curious to see what they do with the defensive line position. Are you going to run Ayers out of a defensive tackle spot? Are you going to run him from the left side? Are you going to run him from the right side? Is Golston going to be in the left side? Where does Noah Spence fit in here? What does this rotation look like? The exciting thing, again, about this defensive line is they actually have depth this year. Noah Spence, Robert Ayers, William Golston, Jacques Smith, your boy, Howard Jones. Howard Jones. So you have all these players right now. You have a healthy Gerald McCoy. You have McDonald. You have Akeem Spence. You have players that can play at the inside position. So I'm curious to see how they run this rotation out. It's going to be interesting to see, because I think, honestly, when you're talking about a defense, it starts up front. Okay, if your defensive linemen can get pressure on that quarterback, it takes pressure off of those linebackers in secondary. It's been known to happen. It's happened before. It can happen again. So I'll be curious to see how this all works out.
Absolutely. And just think about this. You've got Quan Alexander back, the guy who missed the last 4 games of the season. And, that's something that I think a lot of people are overlooking, is the fact that you've got this guy back for the whole season, and he's improved from where he was last season. And let's hope that we can see that translate to the field. But you listen to everything he's saying. I mean, he's buying into this getting better, being competitive type of mentality that Dirk Cutter has brought to this team. So, I really expect big things from that linebacker core.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that. And I'll be curious to see what this linebacking core is asked to do, because it seems like from everything you hear from Quan Alexander to Levante David, they're excited. So does that mean you're going to rush Levante David from a linebacker, from the rush Quan Alexander? What are you going to do with Daryl Smith? So I'll be curious to see what this defensive system is all about. How much 3-4 are you going to run? We know for damn sure that this defense is not going to be a typical Tampa 2. It's not going to be vanilla. It's going to be all over the place. See that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go on to the next. My next question would be, while he's stepping away, for me, I'm looking at the tight end position, the tight end battle myself. Where you have Myers, you have Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and you have Cameron Brate, who Cameron Brate did a great job while Austin Seferian-Jenkins was out. He has nice hands, and it's something to really look forward to. I'm excited about it, and I think that's going to be a big thing. I guess, and what we're talking about on the offensive side of the ball, Doug Martin working in tandem with Charles Sims. I'm excited for that. Just seeing Charles Sims, who has nice hands out of the backfield, that's just another thing that defensive coordinators are going to have to game plan for, is the fact that this guy can run the ball, or they can throw it to him and then he can run the ball. And he's gouged some teams for some big yards last season.
Yeah, the question will be, how will Doug Martin respond contract? Because he's had 2 injury-filled years, and he's had 2 good. He's been productive. So how does he respond now with a big contract? Does he continue with that success, Carl Simpson, to this offense? Do you use him out of the a little bit of more wrinkles into this offense? What about the third running back? Who's the third running back on this team? Is it a Mike James, or is it a Storm Johnson? That'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of things to look forward to with this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. Everything is not all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dan Vitale, he's a guy that, we really haven't mentioned, but just from the game film that I've watched on him, he can run the ball, and he has nice hands. I mean, they could even use him in as big as he is, in a tight end type position.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'll be interesting how he's incorporated offense. So the running game improve because he's a fullback now? Does the overall offense improve because you're using him in different spots that you wouldn't necessarily you didn't have last year? So it adds another component to this offense that you didn't have. So it'll be interesting to see not only the third wide receiving spot, but the offensive line, the running back, and the fullback. All of it is going to be something to see, and that's why you have to pay attention to camp. It's not just training camp season. Preseason leads to a lot of questions being answered, and then once those questions are answered, we have the regular season, and that's go. But I think this preseason's a little. I think the preseason. You know what? You got to find out who is going to contribute on this team and who's going to be on this team as the final 53. If you don't, then you don't have that time, then it's not going to be good. You got to fight. You got to figure out who's going to play where, who's going to start, who's going to contribute right away, who's basically a guy that can go out there and camp and run in shorts and look great. They put the pads on, they become non. That's one of the things they've said about Kenny Bell. He looks great without pads on, but when he gets in game situations, not so much. Again, he hasn't really shown anything, but he has all the potential in the world to be the third wide receiver for this team and possibly the future starting wide receiver, because you look at Vincent Jackson's age. The Buccaneers are looking at this kid and they're saying, hopefully he can solidify that third wide receiving position, because who knows, in the future he may be one of your starting wide receivers.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing I'm looking at is, we talked about these position battles. Who's on the bubble? And a name that comes up to me is George Johnson. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about him. I mean, I've watched him play and I've seen him have some good plays, and then I've seen him disappear. So I'm personally, from what I've seen, and I've actually gone and isolated plays just to see him, and I can't call it. I'm not sure how I feel about him.
Well, isn't this a guy that didn't even have a sack last year? I mean, did he have one sack? I don't remember George Johnson. He could have been George Jefferson for all I know. I mean, he wasn't moving on up last year at all. He wasn't doing anything for this team, and he got paid, pretty good in free agency. That was when Smith made that any dollars or any cents. So we'll see. How does he work out? And does he fit in with Jockey Smith and Howard Jones? It has all the potential, guys, all the potential to be something. He can play outside. He's a big 290. He's only 24 years old. William Golston, when he becomes a free agent next year, as being a guy that may be a top paid player if he produces this year. And look, has he produced? He's improved, but he could have a breakout year. You just don't know. And that's why you got to, somebody may flash, and the fact to flash does the indicator of what direction you should go.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a great point. What do you do? You've got all these players, you got what, Golston, and who else is up for contract renewal, or this is their contract season. It's two main players who I know Golston's one.
Right. You caught me off guard there. I think, is it Jockey Smith? I don't know if it's Jockey's or not. Maybe no, Jockey Smith. It's not Jockey Smith. It's
okay. Will Golston and somebody else. I'll have to reset. I do apologize, folks. I normally have this in front of me. Yeah.
Is it Akeem Spence?
Yeah, there you go.
Akeem Spence. Yeah, and Akeem Spence has improved too. He's going to add to that depth of defensive tackle. I mean, that may be a question that you look at and say, well, you have Gerald McCoy, who's coming off an injury, and you have Clinton McDonald, who was injured for most of the year last year. So can those two guys stay healthy? If they can, that's great. But if they can't, then you have Akeem Spence. You may have to shift Golston inside. You may have to shift Ayers inside. But that's the good thing about what the Buccaneers have done here with the acquisition of Ayers. Not only does he play on the outside, but he also plays in the inside. So if you definitely have an injury to one of those players, and it's certainly possible, but I'm going to knock on wood right now. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, you have a guy like a Golston who could play inside, and you have a guy like a Robert Ayers who could also play inside. And if you kind of think about it, Ayers and Golston are kind of similar with their body type, how they play. Ayers had a phenomenal year last year, a breakout season. Finally for him, he was a first-round pick. Golston, we're still waiting to see, but you could see the flashes. You could see the athleticism. He has all the physical tools. Let's see him put it all together. And if he can, wow, the Buccaneers really have a good problem here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exciting right there. I mean, there you go. You know, we've been crying about the depth, and you know, I like the moves that the general manager has made. He's found guys that are football players, and you know, we're going to be able to see. I have my suspicions on the free agents that we've been getting up to this point, and I think what you saw with Jason Light and who he was able to bring in at in his own way, because he has control of everything. We're going to see if what I'm thinking is true, where I believe that, you know, the people that Lovey brought in were those people that had potential. And I hate that word. I mean, if you go all the way back to Raheem Morris, and I'm not even gonna go back to Gruden, but let's go back to Raheem Morris and think about all the players, all the draft picks, all the free agents that were brought in because of potential. And potential looks good on paper, but I tell you what, we barely, I mean, we had 1 10-win season, and that was it.
Yeah, well, not a lot of free agents brought in during that time, but you were absolutely right. They got unsigned, undrafted free agents, lots of potential, guys that were starting as 7th-round picks, had all this potential. It didn't work out. Potential is the most overly used word in any sports lexicon. But here's the point. At the end of the day, the players that the Buccaneers got, they are proven commodities, okay? And don't be surprised, because the Buccaneers did this last year. They went out and got players like a Joe Holly, like a Galster Cheerless. They got players later on. The Buccaneers still have money under that cap. So let's say there is a third wide receiver, and they don't believe that Kenny Bell or Adam Humphries or Dante Dye are flashing that ability that they would like for this offense. Maybe they go out there and scoop a free agent out. That's why you got to pay attention, because, you know, Jason Light, I think he definitely knows what he's doing. He's going in the right direction. He's got this team on the cusp of a playoff appearance. I'm telling you, I'm saying it again. They're on the cusp of the playoffs. They are so close, and it's going to all come together. It may not seem like it, because you look on paper with that schedule and you look at some of these questions right now that we're posing to you guys. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I want this more than anybody for fans like you and season ticket holders and just diehard fans that have been there from the beginning. These fans deserve better than what they've been getting. They deserve to be able to go to a home game and expect to win, like you go back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Just different. I don't know. It frustrates me that you worry about winning a game at home. I mean, this team, there's just so much more that really, you know, I want for the fan base, and, you know, they deserve it. And, you know, that's kind of where I am. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but, you know, for me, that's what I'm hoping for, you know, just being competitive. And at least, you know, when a team comes into Raymond James Stadium, then, hey, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a team that's can possibly, you know, win some games for us. Looks like are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back with you here. I just got disconnected from my computer. You know, have some technology problems there, but we're back on the phone here, the Note 5. We never rest. It is what it is. We're going to keep on talking about it, but you're exactly right. You know, it's going to be interesting to see what they do this season. And it's because of Jason Light putting them in the position to win and putting them in the position to have depth and talk about this stuff. Because, again, a couple of years ago, we weren't talking about this. The last 5 to 10 years, we have not talked about this team and saying we feel good about them. We feel good because you've had all these draft picks that started right away. You don't have this mix of veterans. You have that on this team. You have a mix of veterans. You have guys like Robert Ayers that are coming in and maybe helping out a Noah Spence or even a William Golston. And that's valuable. Do not understate that fact. Having veterans to come in there as being free agents and tutoring and sharing the experience of the NFL and being a professional is so
Grimes and Hargrave.
Yes. Brett Grimes and Vernon Hargraves, perfect example. Having Vernon Hargraves talk to Rondé Barber, having guys from the past and Derek Brooks and Rondé Barber talk to this team. Those are valuable experiences that you can't put a price on that this team has lacked in the past.
And you know what's really unique about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? You always have the old guys coming in. They're always rotating in. Your Hardy Nickersons, your Warren Sapp's come in. You've seen Derek Brooks. You've heard Warwick Dunn talk. I mean, you just Tony Dungy, just different people that are able to come in and give insight to the younger players. And, you know, I love that about Tampa because, you know, people like you who go way back with this team, we can talk about players, you know, going all the way back to Eric Redd or maybe even a Jack Thompson. And, you know who I'm talking about, you know?
Sure.
So that's what I love. You know, there are some fans you can talk to them. I was talking to a guy yesterday and we were talking about how hot the seats got at the Big Sombrero.
I remember.
Oh my goodness, man!
Like I'm a high school stadium. And you
couldn't help but burn your legs on the back of those bleachers.
Yeah, and you go there, okay, and you go, and usually the more the times they were usually not sold out was usually about 40 to 45,000, and half of those fans were Viking, Bears, or Packer fans. The only time you got to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on TV, and this is how far they've come, is when a team like the Chicago Bears or the Green Bay Packers would come down to Tampa or the Detroit Lions. That would be the only time you could see this team on TV in Tampa because usually it was blacked out. I mean, most of the time you were watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road, and they were absolutely god-awful on the road. So, I mean, it's come full circle here. There was a moment there in the last, in the 09 Raheem Morris kind of deal with Mark Dominic. There were times where there were blackouts and people were scurrying to try to get on the internet. There were people not even watching the Bucs because they were just not a good product. But right now, and we use this word a lot tonight, you have to be excited about the upcoming season and the product that's going to be put out there on the field. This team was not a 6-win team. They're a better team than that, and they're going to be a better team this year, and they're going to show everybody that. And I'm putting my name on that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. And, we will definitely look at this video on July 28th, 2016, when we get into February and we're doing podcasts about what this team did. I will definitely be using this as a reference point because, like you said, I do not believe this was a 6-win team. I believe this team was better than that. Sure. And I feel like there were some deficiencies in certain positions that really hurt this team from winning games because we had a lot of winnable. Yeah, there you go. A lot of winnable games. A lot of there. Sorry. And it's a lot of our rivals, division rivals, are looking at this team and thinking, "Hey, this is the same team we saw last year." No. So you know what? I think there are going to be a lot of people in for a lot of surprises this year.
And I think in the coming weeks, we'll go ahead and examine the schedule, and we'll see, where we sit. And I've been looking at the schedule, and people are like, well, you're opening up against Atlanta. Well, the Atlanta Falcons, that was a team that the Buccaneers swept last year. Okay? Right. So, I mean, that's a winnable game. Yeah, it's on 9/11. Yeah, it's an opening game, and it's going to be tough. But at the end of the day, it's a winnable game. Arizona, that's a tough game. You go on the road, first 2 games. Then you come home against a rookie quarterback with the Rams. Then you play a gauntlet of games against the Panthers and the Broncos. And you're going to have some tough teams. But at the end of the day, the thing that you can get excited about, we use this word again, is the fact that they have the depth, they have better players, and they have better coaching. And that is going to work out in the end. It all comes out in the end, I'm telling you.
Yep, I'm right there with you, man. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit. How are things going with you being on FM? Will fans be able to call into the show this Saturday?
I hope so. We actually had a lightning strike at the radio station last Thursday night. It knocked out the board. So we're left scurrying around, trying to run these shows. And me and Sean were doing this radio show on Saturday afternoons for 2 hours, and A lot of our show, we talk together, but we like to have the fans call in. We like to do their intros. We like to have them call in twice. We like to have the interaction. We didn't have it last Saturday. What I'm told is we're going to have it this Saturday. So thank God for that, because we average a lot of calls, and we love our fans. It's a fan show. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense, and that's just not a motto. That is a way of thinking about what the sports web is all about. We are the evolution of sports radio. This is the evolution, ladies and gentlemen. This is the difference. I think outside the box. I don't want to fit in. I don't want to be the typical sports talk show. I want to stand out. And everybody that calls that show, we treat the fans as if they're a superstar. Yours truly, along with Sean the Sports Don. It's always entertaining. You have to tune in. 106.1. You're listening online, tantalk1340.com. Hopefully we get an FM site here pretty soon. You can also look on TuneIn Radio, look for the Tan Talk Radio Network to hear it. We call it the Tan Talk Sports Network on Saturday afternoons because, again, we're the only FM sports talk show in the Tampa Bay area in that time slot from 3 to 5. Look, you want to go and tune in to a nationally syndicated show? Fine. But if you want to tune in to a sports talk show that has the pulse of Tampa Bay sports and what you want to talk about, then feel free to join the Sports Web on Saturday afternoons from 3 to 5 on WTAN 106.1 FM.
That's right, man. And you can talk about anything from hockey to baseball to football to boxing to wrestling.
Yes.
You name it.
There's movies. Yes. And you know what? Exactly. The great thing about it is, if you call up and you're a fan and we like what you have to say and you do it consistently, we'll pick a winner, and the first of the month, we'll have you on as a co-host. And I kind of got somebody in mind. It's not going to be you because you've been on there before. I kind of got somebody in mind that I'm going to have on there that's been on sports radio before. It's going to be interesting. We're going to make that decision this week, but I kind of got it already set in my mind who we're going to have on. But the only way to win that contest, another incentive, is to call in, provide great sports conversation, not bring any nonsense, bring the passion, bring the excitement. And if I like you and if Sean the Sports Don likes you, we'll have you on as a co-host. Hell, we've had a kid on that was 8 years old because he wanted to come on the Sports Web, and he thought his favorite sports broadcaster in the Tampa Bay area was Peter Blake. So we had to have him on. We had to give the kid what he wanted. He was 8 years old. We had him on. And that's a good thing because you know what? I started watching football when I was 8 years old. So anytime you can give an opportunity for somebody to have their dream to be on radio with the Sports Web, I'm all for it. So let's try to make all the fans' dreams come true so they can come on and do some sports talk radio. We got some surprises coming up here in the next couple of weeks because Buccaneer season is starting. Maybe a round table, maybe a couple writers coming on. I'm not going to say it. Of course, we're going to have Mr. Buzz himself, Rick Brown, who covers everything with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I got another writer in mind that I think is going to join the fray here. So you just got to tune in.
Yeah, it's a great show. I really enjoy it. And, Pete, I want to get your parting thoughts. With all the turmoil that's going on in the world, I don't like talking. This is not a place for politics or anything like that. Sure. This is a sports place. And what I want to get from you are, some parting thoughts for the fans. We've been talking about people being optimistic, get on board with this team, just like, people that got on board with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think that, the ownership has gotten it right. I think the ownership, they brought in a general manager who's a personnel guy, and we can see that with some of the players that, he's brought in so far through the draft. We'll be able to know a little bit more this season with players that were brought in through free agency, where he is the sole personnel guy. We'll be able to know for sure, but this is the case. But I have a good feeling that Jason Licht is that guy, and I feel like fans should really start getting on board and get excited about this team and get excited about this season. Exactly.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And I think you look at the Tampa Bay area overall, the Rays are having their struggles. We talked about it. The Tampa Bay Lightning right now seem like they're the number one team in the Tampa Bay area, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are slowly creeping into that area where if they put those wins on the field, like I think they can, like you think they can, then they're going to be in that conversation right now. So it's a good time to be a Tampa Bay fan. It's definitely a good time to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan because football season is only a couple of weeks away where we really get to see what's 2016 has in store for Buccaneer fans.
That's right. And my guy,
Jameis Winston, yeah.
That's right, man.
Just remember, look, if you doubt what I'm saying, that's fine. You can, okay? You can doubt what I'm saying. But just remember that I was one of the people that said from the very get-go that Jameis Winston was going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneer first-round pick, okay?
Yeah, you said that back in November. I think you said it when college football was still going on.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a guy that I thought was going to be the number one pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And as soon as they hired Dirk Cutter, I believe they were going to take him. There was no doubt in my mind. So if you look, I've been wrong about things. I can be right about things. But at the end of the day, it's about having credibility. I believe I have credibility here because I have a radio show that a lot of fans appreciate. If you haven't heard it, definitely tune into it. But what I'm saying is, for me, it's an exciting time to be a Buccaneer fan because it does seem like they're turning the corner. We'll just have to see. We'll have to let it play out, and we'll give our final predictions. And just stay tuned for Buck What You Heard because we'll be doing this podcast together, and we'll be doing the Sports Web, and everything will be coming together. And we'll give you some insight here that maybe you haven't heard. We're not going to be the same type of guys that are on radio and TV. We're not going to be safe. It's okay if you want to be safe, you want to be conservative. I'm not going to be that way. I'm never that way. I like to stand out. I don't like to fit in. So if you're looking for that cookie cutter show that you usually watch, podcast, or you watch on YouTube, this is not it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this team, and that's why I do what I do, right. And I've gone through the hard times, gone through the times in the 80s and the early 90s. And, sure. I've seen this team lose some games. I've gone to games thinking, oh, man, they're going to lose. But it's nice to have a team in Tampa, And there are a lot of states that don't have teams. So, sure. People should count themselves lucky to have a team. And, all the history behind this team, good or bad, it's just exciting to be a Bucs fan. I know, sure. And you have to be a Bucs fan to understand that.
Sure, and even if you're not a Bucs fan and you feel like this team is not yours, you're from another place, you're say a Chicago Bear fan or you're a 49er fan, I would say turn on the TV this year. I would say watch and see what they have to offer because it may change your mind. But, we'll see what happens. But, at this point, I think I think I'm just ready to let's go. I'm ready to roll. Yeah. Let's do it. So
that's right, man. That's right. And folks, I appreciate all the comments that we've been getting after the show. People have been commenting about how they like the show, and I really appreciate that. Any questions or comments that you have that you want me to get on the next week, please put them out there. I'll get them on there, good, bad, and otherwise. I'll get them on there. And, I appreciate everybody, taking the time to tune in and check us out. So, for me, my parting thought is people are people. We're all human beings out there. We should all have compassion for each other, and everybody should love one another. It's cool to, we're in a climate right now where everybody's into politics and stuff like that. Who cares? It's all right to hate the other guy because of the team he's with. But at the end of the day, we're all football fans, and if you can't love your team, I think Joe Riolano said it best, it's a kid's game. Yeah. And, we love this game. We're passionate about it. I hear it in your voice. I can remember times where the Bucs were losing and you were furious and, you just want to bang your head against the wall. Greg Schiano, case in point, and you wanted to throw him out of a 10-story window, but you're a fan. This is your team and this is who you have pride in. So folks, it's football season. Let's put all the other nonsense aside. This is the only thing that matters from now up until February. Enjoy football. If you're not a Bucs fan, enjoy your team. And this is Gene, super heavyweight. You can reach me on Twitter. You follow me, I'll follow you back. Peter Blake, go ahead and tell everybody how they can get a hold of you one more time and take us out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. On Twitter, pblake1003, or of course, the most entertaining sports talk show in the Tampa Bay area, the Sports Web, on Saturday afternoons on 106.1 FM from 3 to 5, the only sports talk show in the Tampa Bay area from 3 to 5, and there's nothing they can do about it. I'm your host, Peter Blake, giving you something to think about.
And we're out.